Welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are taking a look at my Best Picture category crash course. Now I did this video last year and I really liked the idea of it, so we're doing it again this year. Basically what this is this is separate from my category breakdown videos. While we are taking a look at just one specific category, it's the Best Picture, this isn't what this is this really is just a video for people that maybe are unfamiliar with all of the Best Picture films, maybe don't know what they all are, and are just kind of interested in learning a little bit more about them. Because every year it seems like each year at the Oscars, there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, I don't care to to watch the Oscars because I don't know any of the films that are nominated. They didn't nominate anything that anyone has ever seen." And so I think that there is, and maybe there is some truth to that it's not necessarily the most mainstream movies that are being nominated, but they are good and great movies that are being nominated. So I like doing this video as kind of a way to, if you're unfamiliar with some of the nominees in here, you can come in, listen to me talk about them for a couple minutes, and then see maybe if it piques your interest. What we're going to do here is I have now seen, with I'm Still Here finally reaching theaters here in the United States, I was able to see it, which now completes. I've now seen every Best Picture nominee at least once. The majority I've seen multiple times at this point. But what we're doing in this video is we're going to rank all the Best Picture nominees based off of where I ranked them on my first viewing. I will let you know that a couple of these have already kind of changed places based off of second watches already, but to be true to how I did this video last year, this is my ranking from 10 to 1 based off of the first watch, and then, at the end, a couple days before the Oscars, when I get to my Best Picture category breakdown video, I'll give you the updated ranking there. So let's start at number 10, Emilia Perez. Screenplay by Jacques Audiard in collaboration with Thomas Bittigan, Leia Messias, and Nicholas Levici. Directed by Jacques Audiard. Rita, an underrated lawyer working for a large law firm more interested in getting criminals out of jail than bringing them to justice, is hired by the leader of a criminal organization. The film stars Carla Sofia Gascon, Zoe Saldana, and Selena Gomez. Emilia Perez is rated R for language, some violent content, and sexual material. There was no surprise what film was going to be in 10th place. Every year, it seems like the Oscars do this, where they kind of give you, if they give you 10 films, 9 of them are good, and then there's always one that's kind of like an okay or whatever film. This is one of the first years where I think, for a lot of people, they nominated like an actively bad film in the Best Picture lineup. So even for someone like me who didn't hate Emilia Perez the way that everyone else does, but still didn't enjoy it, it still is very clearly kind of just in 10th place for me, because everything else above is just so much better. And so with Emilia Perez, this is one of those films that even if you don't know all of the Best Picture nominees, if you don't know all of the films that have been nominated, you've still heard the buzz, the controversies, the drama, like everything just revolving around this film, its director, its lead. There's just so much about this film that this is one that you'd have to be living under a rock if you've heard absolutely nothing about Emilia Perez. In this video as well, I should have said earlier that I'm not necessarily going to go too deep into the movies too much, because again, there is more videos in the category breakdowns where I'm going to talk about the specific aspects of these films, and then once we get to the Best Picture category breakdown video, obviously I'll go into more depth about each of these nominees. So mostly what this is this is just to talk about all the films, to give you the opportunity to seek it out. We're a couple weeks away still from the Oscars, if you have any interest. Emilia Perez is one of those that I think if you do have the interest in seeing the film, you probably have already seen it, or you've read enough to give you pause and to let you know that you maybe really aren't interested in it. I will say, if you are looking for some reason to check it out, some of the reasons I would say are, for Zoe Saldana, she gives a great performance in the film. Some of the musical numbers are catchy. There's a couple of them that are not particularly good, but they're so crazy and so insane that you do kind of need to see them. But yeah, there's Emilia Perez. Unfortunately, it is just the one of the nominees this year that just isn't particularly all that good. And I think for most people, I would say the overwhelming majority, this is probably everyone's least favorite nominee. Emilia Perez is available to stream on Netflix, and I would recommend this film to anyone who has curiosity as to why the film has become as polarizing as it has. Coming in 9th place is Wicked. Screenplay by Winnie Holtzman and Dana Fox, directed by John M. Chu. When ostracized and misunderstood green-skinned Elphaba is forced to share a room with the popular aristocrat Glinda, the two's unlikely friendship is tested as they begin to fulfill their respective destinies as Glinda the Good and the Wicked Witch of the West. The film stars Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande, and Jeff Goldblum. Wicked is rated PG for some scary action, thematic material, and brief suggestive material. Now, I do think that there is a good chance that a lot of people have already just clicked off this video and left as soon as they saw where my placement of Wicked. I will say, if you're one of the people that has stayed and is willing to listen to this placement here, I will say again, this was on first watch. I didn't love Wicked as much on the first viewing. I liked it a whole lot more on the second. So this ranking will get updated for the next video, maybe. And I say that because this is one of those where I talked about how there's one film that is kind of bad in Emilia Perez. I like to love the rest of these nominees. So it is everything that is ranked from like 1 to 9. These are all top 20, top 15-ish, films of the year for me. I genuinely love a lot of the rest of these nominees. So there is a lot to kind of, a lot to kind of don't give too much, I think, discredit to where I'm placing this and saying, oh, he didn't like it. I just didn't like it as much as the other nominees, but I do still really like Wicked. And Wicked is one of those that, it definitely has its fans. There are the people that are passionate about this film, the people that were all about this when it was in theaters, helped it become one of the highest grossing films of the year. It helped, I think, the longevity of the film. It was still in theaters for, in today's day and age, a lot of films kind of just leave the theaters pretty quickly. Wicked is one of those that has stayed. I think in some theaters it's still there. There's on my drive home from work, I drive past a movie theater, and they've got a kind of one of those electronic billboards, and they're still pumping out and showing you the Wicked sing-along versions that you can go into a sing-along, version of Wicked. Like, it is still in that theater. It is still in some theaters. And so the longevity and the passion that the people who really do love Wicked have shown this film obviously has given it that life and has given it that extra leg. And it is one of those that I think maybe when part 2 comes out, maybe I'll kind of it's maybe kind of almost the same way with Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2, where I think I'll appreciate the first one more as the second one comes in and kind of completes the whole story. But I will say that even on its own was still a great film. I love the idea that the closing on the Defying Gravity number, such a brilliant and choice that just kind of, again, leaves you kind of hanging, but also leaves you satisfied and leaves you on this powerful emotional moment in the film. There's so much to just really love about Wicked, and I'm glad that a lot of people really do kind of have that love for the film, even if if they love it more than I do. I really do like that this is a film that has kind of garnered that respect and that admiration. Wicked is still in select theaters and is available to rent, and I would recommend Wicked to anyone who likes grand fantasy tales, even if you aren't a fan of musicals. Coming in at number 8, it's Anora. Screenplay by Sean Baker, directed by Sean Baker. Anora, a young sex worker from Brooklyn, gets her chance at a Cinderella story when she meets and impulsively marries the son of an oligarch. Once the news reaches Russia, her fairy tale is threatened as the parents set out for New York to get the marriage annulled. The film stars Mikey Madison, Yura Borisov, and Mark Eidelstein. Anora is rated R for strong sexual content throughout, graphic nudity, pervasive language, and drug use. And I think Anora is another one that on my first watch ranking feels really low. But again, this just goes to show you how much I really loved all of these films that are nominated for Best Picture, because Anora is one that I really, really liked, and I liked a lot of the things that it was doing. I liked the kind of the two different sides of the story, the kind of romantic, beautiful first half, the chaotic, uncut gems, kind of crazy editing, style of the second half. There's so much that I think I really liked about it. I will say that Anora on the first watch was one that I just didn't love it as much as I think everyone else is for the most part. I mean, there's a lot of people that really hate Anora, but there's a lot of people that I think probably 5 times as many people that really just passionately love it. And I don't think I quite got to that level of loving the film. I will just say that it is one that, for me, Mikey Madison is someone that I've obviously been a fan of. If you've just kind of been seeing films, if you've seen her Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Scream, if you're just watching movies, you've seen her as kind of this background or this secondary supporting role in a lot of these different films, and this is one of the first opportunities I think a lot of people have had to see her as the lead, and she is a superstar in this film. This is one of those films that there's 2 things that make this film go. The first being Mikey Madison. If it was any other actress, I don't know if this film would work as well as it did, or it would be different. It wouldn't have the same energy that it does that Mikey Madison brings to it. I will say the other side of that is, I think what makes it really work well is Sean Baker, and I will say that Sean Baker is someone that I've now seen 4, maybe 5 of his films. I'd have to actually stop and count. It's either 4 or 5, and I like most of them, but I think on every single one of his films, I'm either like a half star to a full star lower on Letterboxd than what the average rating is. So Sean Baker is clearly one of those directors that, like, if you love Sean Baker, you love Sean Baker and you love everything he touches, and it's one of those things that, like, if he touches something, it's gold for you. I don't know if I'm just quite there or not with Sean Baker. I do have the feeling that coming up on the channel, maybe in a couple months, there's going to be a Sean Baker director ranked video, so maybe I give myself another shot to kind of fall in love with Sean Baker as a filmmaker. But for now, it's just I'm not quite there. I'm not quite to that level of loving it. And so I do think that there's parts of this that work and create a great film, but again, I don't think the thing that makes you love Sean Baker's films, the touch of humanity and the touch of the kind of personal struggles, I don't know if that connected with me as much on the first watch, and so that's why Anora was a little bit lower on this ranking. Anora is available to rent, and I would recommend Anora to anyone who enjoys adult stories that are packed with humor and tension. Coming in at number 7, A Complete Unknown. Screenplay by James Mangold and Jay Cox. Directed by James Mangold. New York, early 1960s. Against the backdrop of a vibrant music scene and a tumultuous cultural upheaval, an enigmatic 19-year-old from Minnesota arrives in the West Village with his guitar and revolutionary talent, destined to change the course of American music. The film stars Timothy Chalamet, Edward Norton, and Monica Barbaro. A Complete Unknown is rated R for language. Now, A Complete Unknown's ranking here kind of surprised me twice, because going into, before I'd seen all of the Best Picture films, and before, I guess I should say, even before, like, nominations, before I was going into the films that had buzz and could have been Best Picture films or just were going to be big Oscar players, A Complete Unknown was one that I wasn't really excited for, and it was one that I thought that once I did finally see it, it was going to just be lower on all my lists because, A, I don't necessarily love musician biopics. It's not my favorite genre, although I have to admit that there are now multiple that are really good, so maybe I don't like bad musician biopics. If it's well made, I love them. But I'm just not the biggest fan of music biopics. I'm also just not a Bob Dylan fan. It's not that I had anything against Bob Dylan. It's just that a lot of kind of older music, when I listen to is stuff that my dad used to listen to or still listens to, and I kind of pick up from him, and he's not a Bob Dylan fan, so I just was never introduced really, and so I just didn't listen to a lot of Bob Dylan's music, and so there was just a couple factors kind of going into it. I love Timothy Chalamet, so I was excited for that part, but I should also say James Mangold has had a couple films that I'm just not. He's another director that maybe I'm just not as big of a fan of. Logan, aside, Logan I love, but the rest of his films, it feels like he's kind of a studio director. There isn't a whole lot of personal flashes or flourishes in his films that that attract me or that I'm gravitated to. And so there was a lot of reasons where I was kind of just not expecting A Complete Unknown to be one of my favorite of the Best Picture nominees. So I was surprised the first time that it was as high as it was. And then I was surprised the second time when I was making the actual ranking that it's as low as it is, because I genuinely, on my first watch, I had such a great time in the theater. I thoroughly was enjoying the film, and so it's this weird film that's had the duality of, like, I thought it should have been lower, and then I thought it should have been higher, but these are 10 films that are so hard to rank because I like them all kind of to about the same degree, but this is ultimately where A Complete Unknown just kind of fell in, was here in 7th place. It is one that I do think your appreciation and your love for it kind of differs, again, both ways based off of your relationship with Bob Dylan. I know that there's some people that really love Bob Dylan that really love this film. There's a lot of people that love Bob Dylan that maybe don't think it's a great representation or just kind of a good reenactment of this time of his life, and they don't like Timothy Chalamet as the lead, things like that. So it's a film that is kind of polarizing, but I think ultimately if you kind of go in with an open mind and are just willing to watch an entertaining, dramatic story, I think this will work for you. And I think it will work for you as well because this does something that I really like in some musician biopics, because the majority of musician biopics, especially a lot of the bad ones, they're these biopics that start from birth and they end at the musician's death, and you're just getting this whole story of their whole life, and so a lot of it doesn't really connect. This does a really cool thing where it just kind of focuses on one little part, one little moment in his career, and so there's no need for, an older actor to be playing, older Bob Dylan, or for Timothy Chalamet to be in so much heavy makeup, 40 years after the events of the film. Like, the events take place in this one kind of area in his life, and that is something that I've seen some people view it as a positive and some people view it as a negative, where some people don't think, they say that they go in or they come out of the theater knowing less about Bob Dylan than they knew going in, because it doesn't explore his whole life, it just kind of explores a moment. But for me, I think that's what I really kind of love about the film, is just kind of exploring the Newport Folk Festival, just kind of exploring this one moment in Bob Dylan's life. I think just created a kind of riveting and exciting story. A Complete Unknown is playing in select theaters and will be available to rent on February 25th. And I recommend A Complete Unknown to anyone who likes musician biopics, or for anyone interested in learning about this moment in Bob Dylan's career. Coming in at number 6, The Brutalist. Screenplay by Brady Corbet and Mona Fastvold, directed by Brady Corbet. Escaping post-war Europe, visionary architect Laszlo Toth arrives in America to rebuild his life, his work, and his marriage to his wife, Erzsébet, after being forced apart during wartime by shifting borders and regimes. On his own in a strange new country, Laszlo settles in Pennsylvania, where the wealthy and prominent industrialist Harrison Lee Van Buren recognizes his talent for building, but power and legacy come at a heavy cost. The film stars Adrien Brody, Guy Pearce, and Felicity Jones. The Brutalist is rated R for strong sexual content, graphic nudity, rape, drug use, and strong language. Now, I think The Brutalist might be another one that is kind of a complicated film to rank for, I think, for a lot of people that are trying to rank the Best Picture nominees. I think a lot of people either have this like top 3 or bottom 3. I feel like I may be one of the few people that currently has it kind of just in the middle of the middle of the road after one watch. But there's so much about The Brutalist that I think worked very well for me and was gripping and was, just kind of kept you hooked into the story, into the drama, everything that is going on in this character's life. And then there's some things and there's some moments and things that happen particularly kind of, I would say, in the second half of the film that either doesn't completely work for me or work for a lot of people, or it's maybe some metaphors that are kind of a little bit, too on the nose, that just, again, I think it's the messaging is what Brady Corbet was intending to tell, and he wasn't trying to make it this, subtle thing. So there's a reason for some of the messaging kind of being a little heavy-handed, but it's one of those things that I just don't know if the second half works as well for a lot of people as the first half did. Now, The Brutalist is also another one of those that it's a hard film, I think, to rank or to kind of judge, because it is 3 hours and 40 minutes, and so there is so much film that you're kind of digesting, and it's hard to, like, rank a film where you say so much of the film, or, I mean, I shouldn't even say just rank, but rate the film in general, where there's so much of the film that is, like, some of the best filmmaking. And I wouldn't say that there isn't anything in this film, like, there's nothing in this film that is outright bad. Like, it's not like if you take out, these 5 scenes, make it their own movie, it's a 1-star movie. Like, everything, even the things that are lesser or not as well done, they're still good. And so I don't want it to seem like there's ever any points of this film where I'm like, oh, I'm dreading, this is like a, kind of bottom of the year, worst of the year kind of type of film. It never reaches that level, so it is good throughout. It's hard to rate it with some of the inconsistencies of whether you think the whole thing, the whole messaging, the whole impact of the story lands for the duration of the runtime. I will say what does really work well in The Brutalist is the kind of all the technical categories, the craft stuff that it is nominated for, the cinematography, production design, score, all of that. But the biggest thing for me is really it's the acting. It's brilliant acting from Adrien Brody, from Felicity Jones, from Guy Pearce, Joe Alwyn. Hasn't really gotten a whole ton of like buzz this season, but in this film, like, he is potentially one of the most like punchable like antagonists of a story that I've seen this year. Like, he is one of my least favorite characters in any film. Like, he does such a brilliant job of kind of delivering that performance that just makes you like hate him so much on screen. So there's so much about the acting of this film that is so brilliantly well done, and it does kind of help cover up some of those what you maybe consider kind of a weaker element of the film. And overall, The Brutalist it's a 3 hour and 40-minute film that I saw twice within the span of a week. So I think that should tell you that it is like a film that, there is something there. There's something that will draw you to the film. And so it is one that I recommend you see if you haven't seen it yet. The Brutalist is playing in select theaters and will soon be available to rent. And I would recommend The Brutalist to anyone who enjoys grand tales of early America and the price of the American dream. Coming in at number 5, Conclave. Screenplay by Peter Strawn, directed by Edward Berger. After the unexpected death of the Pope, Cardinal Lawrence is tasked with managing the covert and ancient ritual of electing a new one. Sequestered in the Vatican with the Catholic Church's most powerful leaders, until the process is complete, Lawrence finds himself at the center of a conspiracy that could lead to its downfall. The film stars Ralph Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, and Isabella Rossellini. Conclave is rated PG for thematic material and smoking. Now, Conclave is another one that before my first watch of the film, I really just did not think I was going to like this. Solely because I thought that, like, at best this was going to be the two popes. You know, just another movie about popes and about cardinals and kind of drama in the Catholic Church. And I was kind of just I didn't think, you know, and the two popes is fine. It's a good movie. It's not one that, like, I hated by any means. It just didn't necessarily connect with me at that time. And so I just kind of was harshly kind of judging this beforehand of being like, I just feel like this is what it's going to be. And I will say that I went and saw Conclave. It was in select theaters. I think maybe was before it had its full theatrical run, or maybe Conclave just never did get a full theatrical run. But it was at one specific theater. I had to go kind of find it. And when I remember going in and to that day at the theater, going in and seeing, you know, I was picking my seat and seeing that it was like almost sold out, and I was thinking, that seems crazy. I didn't think that Conclave would be the film that was going to be, you know, this big of a sellout, you know. And I walk in, or as I'm, you know, kind of walking through the theater, I'm seeing that it is a lot of older people. And I think that I would say the average age of my theater when I went in to see this was probably around 70. Like, it was a very old crowd that was at this theater. I was maybe the only person under the age of like 40 there. And so I kind of sit down, I have my seat, and I'm watching this movie, and I'm sitting here thinking like, oh, this is way more kind of this thriller, this kind of, you know, conspiracies and drama and rumors and all of this stuff that's kind of coming around. And throughout the film, I kind of kept thinking, I wonder how everyone else is like digging this. I wonder if everyone here, the older audience that I was watching this, I was wondering if this was their type of film, or if they were expecting something maybe a little more two popes-ish. But the entire time I kept thinking, this is incredible, this is brilliant. I'm enjoying so much about this. It's fun, it's upbeat, the score is incredible. It's my favorite score, probably, maybe behind Challengers. Those are like my two favorite scores of the year. So I was loving so much about Conclave. And then without, again, because this is the whole point of this video, is to, if you were kind of hesitant and didn't want to watch Conclave, maybe hopefully this is the video that kind of pushes you into finally giving it a watch. So I don't want to spoil anything, but I will say that there is a moment in the end, kind of the last maybe it's like 15-ish or 20 minutes of the film, kind of something happens at the end of the film that I remember thinking, the audience maybe wasn't liking this as much. They really probably aren't liking it now, you know, kind of towards the end of the film, because of some of the reveal that happens kind of there at the end of the film. And I remember walking out, and sure enough, there was a couple, you know, super nice, you know, kind of these older couples that were kind of see me walking out of the theater with them, and they're asking what I thought and what the ending meant, and kind of you know, having to have me explain kind of what even really happened at the end of the film and explain what it means. And it was just kind of this really cool experience that for me, it's just a theatrical theater going experience that I'll always remember as being such a fun and different experience for me. And then it's also one that the film has kind of lasted. It's really stayed as fun and as memorable, and now that I've watched it a second time at home, I just had as great of a time watching it the second time. So I really do just love Conclave. Conclave is available to stream on Peacock, and I would recommend Conclave to anyone who likes bottled dramas that keep you hooked throughout the runtime. Coming in at number 4, I'm Still Here. Screenplay by Walter Salles, Murilo Hauser, and Heitor Lorega. Directed by Walter Salles. In the early 1970s, the military dictatorship in Brazil reaches its height. The Paiva family, Rubens, Eunice, and their 5 children, live in a beachside house in Rio open to all of their friends. One day, Rubens is taken for questioning and does not return. The film stars Fernanda Torres, Selton Mello, and Valentina Hersage. I'm Still Here is rated PG-13 for thematic content, some strong language, drug use, smoking, and brief nudity. Now, I do want to kind of start this section off by saying to all of the wonderful people in Brazil that I'm sure have now just, you know, tuned in for this part of the video and are going to be leaving their comments in support for Fernanda Torres. First, welcome. And second, I would like to apologize. I'm sure I butchered a lot of the names. Obviously, I'm not super fluent or familiar with some pronunciation of Brazilian and Portuguese names. So again, apologies if I've butchered those. But yeah, I'm Still Here is one that I had been saying that I was really excited to see this because of how a lot of people, but again, especially the people in Brazil, how they have really been hyping this movie up and they have been giving it so much love and so much attention. And so for this entire time, I was so excited for this film. And I will say that kind of back when it was first kind of getting some buzz, I guess initially in kind of the international film category, and then once Fernando Torres's performance was really taking off, especially after the Golden Globe win, that's when I first kind of was starting to learn about I'm Still Here and knowing of the film's existence. I didn't really know anything about that film at the time, and because of all of the buzz and the love it was getting, I decided that I wanted to still know as little as possible. I did not want to know anything about the film. I didn't want to know what it was about. I wanted to, when it finally got into theaters here in the United States, I wanted to go in as blind as possible and have this experience that it seems like a lot of people were having with this film. So when I went into the theater a couple days ago, now that it's finally playing, I kind of had this experience of thinking of what do I think this film's going to be about, and what am I expecting when I'm watching this? And so all I can really say is what I kind of thought the film was about, or what I thought was going to happen, was because of how much love Fernanda Torres has gotten, I thought that this was going to be some powerhouse, like she's on screen, and I've seen a bunch of the still images. I thought she was going to be screaming, I thought she was going to be crying, I thought it was going to be this drama just centered around her and the things that were happening to her family or to her in general or whatever. And I thought it was just going to be this big kind of outburst of acting that I thought was going to just be this thing that you watch it and you just can't deny that she is just taken over the screen and she is commanding everything. And so that's kind of all I really knew. So then I'm watching the film, and the first 20-ish minutes or so, she's very much just kind of in the background. It is showcasing her entire family. Her husband is kind of a little bit more of the, if you had to pick who's kind of the lead, I would say the husband, Rubens, is a little bit more kind of front and center, as well as just the kids. I think all of the kids have way more kind of screen time, and Fernanda Torres kind of pops in some scenes here and there. And I remember kind of watching this thinking like, okay, something's going to happen. Like, obviously Fernanda Torres has got to, I know she is the lead actress. I know this film kind of revolves around her. At some point, she's going to take over. Like, I'm enjoying this experience with the family, but I just kept thinking something's going to happen. And sure, yeah, something does happen that kind of forces Fernanda Torres into the lead right of the film. Again, I don't want to say exactly what that something is because I want you to be able to experience it as blindly as you can as well. But once Fernanda Torres gets in the lead, I was thinking, okay, here we go. This is where it's going to start happening. She's going to just be acting so loud. She's going to be screaming, crying every other scene. It's just going to be that type of acting. And what I got was, for the next 2 hours, this very emotional and raw and just beautiful performance from Fernanda Torres. She really is, the acting is phenomenal and is 100% deserved of her nomination, and it's deserving that she is kind of in winning contention now. And I was just kind of just caught off guard though, because I was like, this isn't the type of acting I thought I was going to be getting. It's way more subtle, it's way more reserved, and it's just such a beautiful performance and such a just tender and emotional performance from her throughout the film that the entire time I was just kind of in awe, that I was thinking, this is not at all what I thought the film was going to be about. I am totally just in love with this and in love with the emotions. And it's one of those films that I will say there were kind of moments on the first watch. Again, I think this is there's a couple here that I've only seen once. This is one of the few in this category I've only seen one time. And I will say there were moments of seeing this the first time where I didn't necessarily know what it was going for, or I didn't know the themes or the emotions it was trying to hit. And so there was a couple moments where I thought, like, maybe I'm not loving this as much as I was hoping. But then when it gets to the end and you realize the entire purpose of the way they told the story the way they did, it hit and it connected so much that I think on a second watch, where I kind of go in knowing that the headspace I need to be in and understanding what the story is telling me from start to finish, I think I'm Still Here is one of those films that I can only love more and more and more each time I watch it. I'm Still Here is in select theaters and will soon be available to rent. I recommend I'm Still Here to anyone who is interested in true stories of tragic events and the lives of those that were affected by them. Coming in at number 3, Nickel Boys. Screenplay by Ramel Ross and Jocelyn Barnes. Directed by Ramel Ross. Chronicles the powerful friendship between two young black teenagers navigating the harrowing trials of reform school together in Florida. The film stars Ethan Heresy, Brandon Williams, and Anjanou Ellis-Taylor. Nickel Boys is rated PG-13 for thematic material involving racism, some strong language, including racial slurs, violent content, and smoking. Now, Nickel Boys and I'm Still Here are probably two of the least seen of all of the Best Picture nominees, and so I'm really glad that I loved them both as much as I did, and they're this high up, because hopefully this is kind of a good not excuse, but a good reason for you to go check them out if you haven't seen them yet. Because I love both of these stories. Nickel Boys is another one. When I went to the theater a couple weeks ago to finally see this, I went in again nearly as blind as possible. I knew next to nothing about the film and about the experience of what I was getting myself into, and other outside of I guess the way that it was shot, the cinematography, the POV kind of storytelling thing that they use there, and that again, I think that doesn't work for some people. It worked very well for me, so that was part of why I loved this film so much. But also, just what worked so well for me was the script and the performances from really our two main leads, but all of the other boys that are in this reform school, Ingenue Ellis Taylor, and some of the couple of kind of adult or teacher characters. They're all delivering these captivating and just phenomenal performances. Some of them a little bit more loving and good natured, some maybe a little bit more sinister or something that kind of something else is going on with some of these performances. And so everyone is just giving you this wide range of what you're expecting from character to character, and I think it all just meshes super well together. Nickel Boys was one of those that I was enjoying or appreciating the majority of the film, and then once we get to kind of the end of the film, there's one particular scene I will kind of say that I don't know if this is necessarily, I don't think it's really a spoiler, but the film is told in this period of time, and some movies will do flashbacks. This film does like a flash forward. There's some scenes every here and there where you're following someone in the future. And there's one particular scene kind of at a bar with the character and someone else, and it was kind of this one scene that just like gripped me and captivated me. And then almost like from that point on, I was just so hooked and like emotionally drained. I think once we get to kind of the end, the last couple moments of this film, there's just so much about Nickel Boys that I think is just very powerful, very emotional, and just makes you just you're just captivated by the overall storytelling here from Ramel Ross and from the performances. So Nickel Boys is one that if you don't know a whole lot about, I recommend going in as blind as possible, and I think for the most part, I think the majority of people are going to really enjoy this one. Nickel Boys is in select theaters and is available to rent. I recommend Nickel Boys to anyone who loves an excellent screenplay combined with a director executing on their vision. Coming in at number 2, Dune Part 2. Screenplay by Denis Villeneuve and Jon Spaihts. Directed by Denis Villeneuve. Follow the mythic journey of Paul Atreides as he unites with Chani and the Fremen while on a path of revenge against the conspirators who destroyed his family. Facing a choice between the love of his life and the fate of the known universe, Paul endeavors to prevent a terrible future only he can foresee. The film stars Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, and Rebecca Ferguson. Dune Part 2 is rated PG-13 for sequences of strong violence, some suggestive material, and brief strong language. Now we get past the last two being the most underseen films in the category. I think Dune Part 2 is the most seen in the Best Picture lineup. I guess Dune Part 2 and Wicked. Those are the two that I think the most people have seen. So this isn't necessarily one of the recommendations here, or one of the nominees we're going to talk about where I'm saying, oh, you maybe haven't heard this and this is my recommendation, you should go see it. Like, you've probably seen Dune Part 2. This ranking and this putting it here and talking about it here is just to really show you how much I love this film. This is one of the best films of this year. It is one of the strongest kind of directorial visions. It's a shame that Denis Villeneuve, this is twice now that he has just not been getting into the Best Picture lineups really anywhere. I guess the first one he was getting in everywhere and just fell off at the Oscars, and then this year just didn't really materialize anywhere. It's a phenomenal, the vision that he has, the way that he has been able to craft and create this world and to tell this story is just brilliant. So much credit to the success of this franchise and to the success of this story goes to Denis Villeneuve. And what really makes the rest of this work so well is, again, the performances. There's so many actors. Like, this is in a lot of the categories, or a lot of these breakdowns where I say the film stars, I give you the top 3 build or the top 3 stars. For the majority of them, there's a pretty clear cut, like, these are your top 3. I think in Dune Part 2, I think this is still kind of your clear-cut top 3, but there's like 50 more people I can name that have such an important role. 50 is maybe an exaggeration, but at least 10 to 15 that have such an important role, such an important part of the film, have very significant screen time, and again are just integral to where this story goes and how it arrives at the end. There's just so much brilliant acting. It's such a star-studded cast. It's a sci-fi epic that you know, unlike a lot of kind of these sci-fi films that we've been getting the last couple years, like this is one of the classic top cinematic sci-fi films of all time at this point. Like the Dune franchise is to that level. It is up there with the rest of kind of the greatest science fiction films ever made. So I do think that Dune Part 2 is worthy of all the buzz and the love that it is getting, and I do think that it is worthy of you checking it out if you're one of the few people left that hasn't checked out either Dune or Dune Part 2. Dune Part 2 is available to stream on Max and Netflix, and I would recommend Dune Part 2 to anyone who enjoys blockbuster cinema and iconic franchises that reach a wider audience than the fandom. And coming in at number 1, The Substance. Screenplay by Coralie Farjah, directed by Coralie Farjah. A fading celebrity decides to use a black market drug, a cell-replicating substance that temporarily creates a younger, better version of herself. The film stars Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, and Dennis Quaid. The Substance is rated R for strong, bloody, violent content, gore, graphic nudity, and language. Now, there was no doubt for me at any point what my number one favorite Best Picture nominee was going to be this year. It's The Substance. It is a film so absurd and so just batshit crazy that it was like impossible to even envision this being a thing that was going to happen at the Oscars, that this was going to be a film that was gonna get, I think makeup and hairstyling was like the one that I was like, that is the only thing I could see the Academy, that specific branch, touching this film, and like no one else. For this to have gotten 5 nominations, with 4 of them being like the above the line actress, director, screenplay, picture, like that shows the love that the Academy had for this film as well, which is just mind boggling to me, because this is one of those films that I have a lot of friends that maybe they'll see like horror films, and those are the ones that I can kind of like, okay, maybe point you this direction and say I think you'll enjoy this film. I have a couple other good friends that watch all of the Oscar movies, and they're all up to date on everything when we have a big Oscar party at her house, and I don't know if they're gonna see this. I don't know if this is one that they're gonna make the time out to see, because I don't think this is going to be their vibe, and I think that if they do watch it, they're gonna hate it. And that's, I think, the idea of this film is, I think that there are some people that really are just going to connect and are on the wavelength with it, that maybe are a little bit more fans of horror, specifically body horror, that I think they're going to appreciate so much more of what's happening than I think some other people will. And this is one that I will say that there are some aspects of the film that aren't perfect. There are some things that aren't my favorite. Some of the dialogue is a little weird. Some of the conversations or the callbacks sometimes I feel like are a little awkward, but what it does is I think it adds to kind of the vibe that the film is putting out there. There's a whole lot of this world that doesn't make sense, and it doesn't feel like it's a real world, which I think is what, if you can suspend your disbelief and say like, okay, this isn't a real world story, this is some fantasy film, I think you're able to kind of just appreciate kind of the wackier nature of the story. And I think that becomes something that is, initially maybe is a little off-putting or a little kind of weird, doesn't quite work for you. I think once you kind of accept it as that, it then really works for you, because it really just kind of helps build the weird kind of version of Los Angeles that we've got going on here in this film. And again, there's just so much about this that from start to finish, the performances are all great, the direction, the screenplay, phenomenal. I mentioned the makeup is the big thing that this film has going for it. I think it's one like sure Oscar win. I think it's could win a couple, but that's like the one that I think it's a lock for. There's just so much about The Substance that creates such an insane world. And then after getting a great story, you then get 30 more minutes tacked onto the end of just the most insane moments I've seen in film this year. And it's one of those that I think some people really, there was a couple of people that left the theater the first time I saw it that really just weren't digging what was happening at the end of the film. But I think for the rest of us, especially if you're seeing it as blind as possible, you're just going to be so stunned and so taken back by what you're watching. And if anything, even if you don't like the film, you can't deny that The Substance is going to just be a memorable movie experience for you, something that you're going to remember where you were, and you're going to remember watching this film for the first time for the rest of your life. Substance is available to stream on the Mubi Prime Video channel, and I would recommend The Substance to anyone who likes body horror films and anyone willing to take a chance on a wholly original story that goes off the rails in the most chaotic way. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down below in the comments what your ranking of the Best Picture nominees is. And again, this is just a reminder, this is my ranking off of my first watch. There's a lot of the ranking that's already kind of a little bit different, and we'll update that ranking once we get to my Best Picture category breakdown video, which will be coming out probably right at the end of February. But yeah, just let me know your rankings here, and we'll see how we kind of where we differ and what films you love that maybe I didn't love as much, or vice versa. But yeah, just let me know all that down below in the comments. And if you'd like to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the future category breakdown videos that are coming on the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. And have a great day.